Okay, everyone, we are at the top of the hour. I want to welcome everybody to the YASH and SAP Environment, Health, and Safety webinar focusing on digitalization in EHS, as you see with our title slide in front of you right now. Really always excited to talk about SAP EHS and what YASH Technologies can do in a partnering role with SAP. We'll get into some introductions in just a few moments. To kick things off, though, I'll introduce myself. My name is John Gretter, Vice President of the SAP service line with YASH Technologies. I got an esteemed panel of individuals from SAP and YASH Technologies joining me today to give you a level set of what's in it for you in today's webinar. Today is going to be a topic-driven discussion going over a variety of things from what we're hearing in the marketplace and hearing from other customers and clients and businesses specifically to environment, health, and safety. Also going into some really engaging things around topics like digitalization and what SAP is doing to embrace digitalization. Sustainability has become a huge buzzword as we went through, especially these last year and 4 months. It's not about just meeting today's needs, but how is that going to position businesses going forward in that sustainable model? So we'll dive into these topics in a lot more detail. This will not be just a monotone, just walk through the steps. This will be a live engagement, and we ask you from an audience perspective to send any questions that you have in the chat function in the Zoom meeting platform. And as time permits, we'll enter those questions into today's conversation. If we don't get to your questions today, don't worry about it at all. My colleague, Yogesh Nagpal, will circle back with you within about 24 hours of today's webinar and address what those questions might be. So any and all engagement that you can offer just makes this an even better experience, not only for you and the audience, but obviously for us from the panelists as well. So without further ado, I want to focus the conversation and get to those introductions on those folks that are most important to today's webinar. And those are our panelists from SAP as well as our additional panelists from YASH Technologies. I'm going to start by opening it up just as I see the panelists on my screen here. I'll first start with John Martin, and then I'll go to Mike Centerato, and then finally to Yogesh Nagpal. And just because you can never have too many Johns in any one meeting, I'm going to go to the next John and ask John Martin from SAP to introduce himself.
Thank you, John. Hello to everyone. John Martin, and I am a Principal Solution Advisor with SAP, responsible for our environmental health and safety portfolio and helping customers and the market understand how those solutions help enable business. And I've been in the space for about 20 years. A lot of that was on the delivery side, implementing projects and helping customers with process optimization. And I've been with SAP nearly 4 years now. Thank you.
John, thank you. Mike, over to you, please, sir.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Mike Centerato. I'm the solution manager for our EHS applications at SAP, which means I own the go-to-market strategy, sales support, partner support, things like that. I've been in the EHS software space for 22 years, 20 of those with SAP, working with the EHS applications that we have, starting with consulting and then moving into the solution management role.
And then finally, over to Yogesh.
Thank you, John. My name is Yogesh Nagpal, working with YASH Technologies for past 15 years. I've spent good amount of my time into EHS. In fact, I'd say 18 out of my 20 years experience goes into EHS. I started working on EHS with REACH and ROS compliance when one of the leading manufacturing company was moving their leaded processes to a lead-free technology. And that was the start. Fresh came out of the college, moved into compliance, and still after 20 years, still doing the same thing. Yes, more towards environmental, more towards sustainability. Every 3 years, something new comes. And again, with YASH Technologies, it has always been exciting to pick up new stuff and cater to my customers' demands with mature solutions like SAP on the table. Quite excited to be on the panel, John.
All right, and guys, I gotta share with you. You're making me smile right now. I remember back when I first started moderating webinars during the pandemic times, about a year and 4 months ago. we would do introductions and I would find myself pulling the virtual emergency brake, like stop, you're taking too long. These webinars have come so far now. I mean, you guys are pros. You've got this intro down to a science. I mean, I think each of you took like 30 seconds to give a great introduction of yourselves and your subject matter expertise behind this topic. So again, it just makes me smile how we've all adapted, and we were getting ready to join the webinar today. I shared with all of you, we've done enough of these now. It's become as commonplace as tying our shoes every day. So really looking forward to working with each and every one of you, and Mike, especially you. We did one of these, I think, back in August of last year when I was moving my daughter into the University of Georgia. So time flies. I mean, we're getting ready to move her in for her sophomore year in just a couple of months. So again, looking forward to working with you guys today. The level set and getting ready to go into that first topic. Today, taking it in from the attendee standpoint, we really want to dive into the digitalization, the sustainability aspect, as you heard me say in the intro to today's webinar. And we'll dive into each of those topics and allow the panelists to share their points of view and really share what makes SAP a leader from a digitalization and a sustainability standpoint. And Yogesh, I know you're going to bring some case studies and some YASH success stories to the discussion and really build out what partnering with any partner, but specifically YASH Technologies, can do for our viewers to leverage all of that good stuff that SAP has. Before we get into digitalization and sustainability though, I've been really intrigued by hearing what all of you have shared in our preparation as to what your ear has picked up as you've been talking to customers in the marketplace, especially over the last 2 or 3 months, where we've seen this shift start to happen from everything being virtual to now doors have really opened back up. There's been a very dedicated return to work that we've all witnessed. So if you would, each of you jump in, and Mike, I'll start with you. Just give the audience what you've been taking away as you've been talking to clients and that migration from virtual to back in person and what that's meant.
Yeah, I think that even with the COVID situation and obviously as that's evolved in the past, I guess it's almost 18 months now, and even the renewed focus on topics like sustainability, it might actually be surprising to hear that. I think that the fundamental value drivers of EHS processes, EHS solutions, and software applications, from years past are actually still relevant, and the principles that EHS departments and personnel have to kind of follow and drive forward, they're still relevant, they're still important, and they need to be adhered to as employees come back to work, as you're trying to figure out where your risks are, where you have certain issues, certain corrective actions that may need to be processed for, things like that. I think it's more just that what has evolved is the technology, the innovations where these value drivers are either expressed or supported, and that's changed rapidly, and it continues to. The evolution every day. As I look at some of the, and we'll talk a little bit about it later on in this session. Some of the IoT device vendors that are out there, and different use cases, different types of technology, different interfaces, different things that are out there now that, again, a couple of years ago, were not really talked about that much. And now they're paramount to, operating in the correct way, in a safe way. So, John, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike. I agree entirely with, your comment that the baseline and let's say best practices for environmental health and safety management haven't changed. And in fact, in many ways, the pandemic, as one example Mike mentioned, it really catapulted the focus on those underlying, let's call it best practice processes, certainly highlighted the importance of EHS. So as ironic as that sounds, one of the things that we've heard from customers, and I'm speaking specifically of the environmental health and safety professionals or leadership within customers, is that acknowledged and that renewed focus on the importance of various aspects of EHS. Mike also mentioned sustainability and the focus on that. That focus isn't necessarily new. There might be a resurgence around different aspects of sustainability that EHS helps, of course, support from a foundational standpoint. But I guess what I would say, the mega trend that I've seen, even acknowledged around customers that I've met with and talked to solution demos and things like that on, is really being able to bring to bear those best practices. And maybe last comment is pandemic as an example again. It actually accelerated the adoption of additional innovations for this area, like sensor devices or remote working situations. It really did bring to bear, kind of what can we do to work smarter with less, or in more remote ways and more dynamic ways. So I'll just stop with that, but it's been really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that maybe drive home the point a little bit. You see on the screen there a concept that, at SAP, from the solution management standpoint, we use this in a couple different ways. One is that, this is kind of a guideline that we want to follow when we're considering, software innovations and driving, software to the market, where we always want to be, kind of moving towards the right, where there's more autonomy, more intelligence, better analytics, more integration, all those things that drive better value. But this model really is relevant to, let's say, the COVID situation, to ESG disclosures, safety culture, all those kind of fundamental things that EHS practitioners and departments have to deal with. This model is relevant for all of them. I think another way that we look at this is, again, the initial question here was around what are we hearing from customers, and we talk to customers that are, I would say, all along the axis here around solution maturity. Some are kind of, let's say, over on the left, they've got disparate systems, maybe no system, and others that are a little more advanced. And I think that, but all of them are asking us, how to move forward, how do we get better, how to be more integrated, how to be more intelligent, more efficient, and how do the software systems and the IoT devices that are out there now, how all of that can kind of help them move to that ideal. So.
And Mike, John, really appreciate those insights and sharing some of those latest and greatest things that you've been hearing in the marketplace. And I know we'll get into those evolutionary components of EH&S. John brought up how adoption has been sped up as a result of the pandemic, and that's one of the topics that we'll get to a little later in the webinar, is just how some of those technologies have been on the fast track. I mean, and I don't even know if fast track, warp speed would be a better way to put an explanation behind what we've seen in the last year and 4 months or so. But getting into, as we wrap up what we've heard in the marketplace and really tie a bow on that topic, the value right now, Mike, and I want to come back to you because you talked about this in your intro, and that's that sustainability piece. And I know in our discussions, SAP has been really zeroing in on the value and the need for sustainability in their EH&S offering. So if you would just take a few minutes and walk the audience through what SAP has specifically done from a road mapping perspective in positioning your solution for sustainability.
Sure, John. And I think if we can go to the next slide, this here, just to be sure, that was the overall, let's say, solution scope that we have for SAP EHS at the moment, and it's what kind of drives us forward in that journey towards again, autonomy and intelligence and things like that. From a sustainability perspective, I would say that probably the last 18 to 24 months. SAP has really made a clear commitment all the way up to the CEO and the board level, publicly and also internally, to be a strong enabler of sustainable practices, and also to be an exemplar, where we're also internally as a company doing the best we can to be a good corporate citizen and drive corporate social responsibility. There's a theme that we put out. It's called Chasing Zero. Zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. And again, both from an internal standpoint, where SAP has, it's usually been ranked at the top or near the top when there's evaluations of sustainable operations and corporate social responsibility. Now we're trying to drive the focus more towards our solution suite and working with our customers And I think that SAP is kind of in a unique position where the nature of our enterprise, integrated platform, allows us to deal with a topic like sustainability, where you really need information from all over the enterprise. And I'd say in this day and age, you need that in real time. And we have, the software solutions and the integration to kind of do all that and drive that insight where it needs to go. And you see here, kind of, again, some of the themes and some of the solution areas that we're focused on. Towards the bottom there, climate. If you go back 1 sec. So, climate and natural capital accounting. That's mainly a focus on, let's say, carbon accounting, carbon reduction in carbon intensity, emissions, things like that. Resource productivity, tracking, and reuse is more the focus on supply chain and driving a circular economy. Whether it's responsible design, responsible sourcing, those types of things. Protecting people and communities. Again, more the corporate social aspect. EHS has a part in that around making sure that the workforce is safe and well. There's other components to that as well, as again, for a company being a good corporate or social citizen. And then finally, sustainability performance management, just pulling all that together to make sure that the companies are both complying with regulations and also driving communication to all stakeholders and shareholders around sustainability goals, performance against those goals, making sure that we're reporting and providing data to all the indexes that are out there, whether it's the GRI reporting, SASB, and some of the others that are in the market today. If you go to the next slide, just a little more granular view, some of the key solutions that are either out today, such as EHS, which I'm responsible for, or some of the ones that are coming in the very near future. This is kind of some of the focus areas, some of the key solution areas and actual solutions coming out. Again, responsible design and production, corporate sustainability reporting, footprint management. If we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, or we talk about scope 1, 2, and 3, and I think John will go into a little more detail on this in the next segment here. But the idea is that we can calculate corporate emissions and categorize those, and again, make that information available to all stakeholders. But there's also a view looking at it from a product standpoint that some companies obviously have a focus on. And so we can provide some of that same emissions data, but make it available through a product lens and pull other data that's needed from across the enterprise to really get that exact product footprint view that I think stakeholders and shareholders are asking for today. Okay. John, any other comments or anything I missed?
No, I was just going to say that, Mike, you mentioned this, but SAP as an exemplar, it might be interesting to folks because we don't tout it enough, I think, in the market. With Dow Jones Sustainability Index report for our industry, software industry, we've ranked #1 in our industry as the most sustainable software company on earth for, I think, 12, maybe 13, definitely 12 years in a row. Yeah. And yeah, it's impressive that the focus has come back to this, and we can actually now put our money where our mouth is as an exemplar, which I'll speak a little bit there of how we enable customers to do the same here in a moment.
Yep.
Mike, John, anything else around the topic of sustainability before we move on to our next topic today?
I think maybe, thank you for asking, John. I was thinking about adding more there from this standpoint. Mike touched on this.
John, I knew that light bulb wasn't quite out over your head yet. So go ahead, please.
There's a first time for everything, John.
And we've got it on video too, John, and it'll live on forever within SAP. We caught you there.
The vision for SAP here for sustainability is we talked about the third line, the dimension for business. If you're talking about bottom line, your profit margins, and the green line, and our leadership and our executive board and many interviews and seminars and conferences have talked about this. The idea, though, is embedding sustainability within all of the practices end to end in your business, regardless of your industry. Everyone knows that we serve dozens of industries, and the key thing here is SAP. There's a statistic out there that I'm proud of, that over 75% of all transactions on earth touch an SAP system somehow, somewhere in the ecosystem of our customers, right? And if you take that and you parlay that into how we could help drive sustainability, and if we embed sustainability visibility and aspects all the way down to the data level into all those different processes and solutions from SAP, that's our vision for enabling sustainability end to end in your operations, and that can't be overstated.
Yeah, again, I mentioned we're in a unique position where I think it's 400,000 customers now worldwide, and to John's point, it's we touch all aspects of these businesses, and the more we can do to kind of embed sustainable practices and processes within that, the better. And that's the focus. So.
Well, Mike and John, really appreciate your insights on that topic on sustainability from SAP's perspective. At this point in time, want to pivot because Mike, you touched on something and you led that we would jump into it in a little bit more detail in this next segment. And this next segment will be directly towards John Martin with SAP and Yogesh Nagpal from YASH Technologies. And where you touched on was that notion of carbon footprinting and emissions management, because we're hearing a lot about that in the marketplace as we were preparing for not only this webinar, but in our conversations over the past 3 to 4 months. And as we've discussed, this is a complex topic. It's not something that's easily managed. Emissions and carbon footprinting, those types of things, usually people are like, oh my gosh, where do I even begin? So with that, really want to turn it over now to John Martin and allow you to dive deeper into how SAP addresses that and really how SAP is a leader in that area of carbon footprinting and emissions management. And then Yogesh will transition over to you after John shares his thoughts.
Thank you, John. Actually, on this slide, before we advance to the next one, if you'll just go back real quickly, I was hoping to catch you there. Just go back one slide. And Mike mentioned the fact that we are introducing solutions for product footprint management, right? But I wanted to make sure you realize that we have long since had, for nearly 2 full decades, we've had solutions in place in our EHS portfolio to manage your overall, he called corporate or operational carbon footprint. What we typically call emissions management, we've had solutions for enabling emissions management, specifically scope 1 and 2, majorically speaking of that. And now, as we look, like I said, we can help end to end in business. We simply are extending, no pun intended, that footprint for carbon management into different aspects of business, whether it's your product footprint, if you're a manufacturer or distributor, or even a business that's a multi-focused business and you have products, whether you're looking at sustainability footprint out of R&D or further upstream in your business. The key is making sure that we add those touch points so that you can collect that data and have real-time visibility into your footprint, regardless of where it fits into your operations. So now if you'd advance.
Yeah, John, I just want to interject real quick.
Ahead,
we can tell the audience, you and I are going to be on a customer call, I think one Friday, where the customer is asking us, how would we model and account for remote workers? They're doing work for the company, but they're at their house using electricity. They're using equipment. They may have even a waste component to it. And, to John's point, it's like, how do we kind of extend what we can do with our solutions to kind of cover some of these new aspects and new ways that the companies are trying to account for their footprint and account for the emissions for carbon. So just wanted to put that in there. So
that's good. That's a good example to bring up. And actually, I'll expand on that here. That's a good one to expand on. If you'll advance to the next slide. The idea around emissions management or carbon footprint management is being able to, there's a couple of different nodes or modes rather that you can take here. You can simply use all of your aspects of operations and however you're managing that today, including Etch-a-Sketches and spreadsheets and systems like SAP. And you can put that data from all those disparate sources into a reporting tool. And certainly that is a mode that you can take to get all of this information, whether it's if you're looking at the GHG protocol and EPA in the States here, you're looking at how they look at carbon emissions. Again, there's 3 scopes: direct emissions or scope 1 emissions, Scope 2 emissions related to fuels or energy consumption in your operations. And then Scope 3, we've mentioned a couple of examples of Scope 3, and traditionally, globally, both geographically and in business segments, Scope 3 emissions, which are defined in some 15 categories, can be pretty elusive to capture. As just a couple of examples, Mike just mentioned one moment ago, a Scope 3 emission, or in one sense, might be where you have a remote workforce or activity for people who are outside of your business who contribute to your services or your products. In this case, maybe actually, Mike, maybe that would be a Scope 1 and 2 in the example we were giving. The point is you have these things that are more difficult to track traditionally. And what we're showing here is, regardless of the scope of the emission, and you see some of the pain points there, with one of the challenges being data collection. It's not the actual how difficult is it to give someone a platform to collect data. It's understanding the granularity and the variability of that underlying data that feeds those scopes, especially Scope 3, and then being able to aggregate that data into meaningful groupings and then calculate that data using emissions factors that are published worldwide by different agencies or entities, and deriving that carbon, that CO2 equivalent or equivalent to get your footprint overall. And the idea of how we do that is basically, regardless of that source of data, if you're looking at how it works, gathering that data, whether it's utility data for Scope 2 or that Scope 3 information around, like an example of gathering information from a supplier or something, being able to collect that data in a meaningful and consistent manner, store it in a consistent way, and using a consistent engine to process all of that so that you have that single line of sight. In the case of GHG emissions, as you see in the middle, you're looking at Scope 1 and 2 inventory tracking. For instance, in the US, the EPA has guidelines around what your limits that you legally can without being fined or cited. And so companies always track that from a compliance standpoint and a management point. But there's a heightened intro with that than just ensure compliance. And so if you look at what Mike was talking about earlier on that maturation cycle, you see a way to understand not just that you're all the way through to where your products or your services are consumed in the market, and understanding that full life cycle of your footprint and your contribution to both your customers and stakeholders' footprints as well. So if you advance the slide on just a little more of how we do that, just as a quick glimpse. I talked about collecting that data from various sources, and what SAP allows is we allow a couple of different modes of data collection, including, maybe most excitingly, automating that process. I talked about the different sources, but what if you could get that information automatically gathered as opposed to having to have someone manually put it in? That's possible for all the scopes in different scenarios, and we enable that through different methods, whether it's our manufacturing intelligence suite or APIs that we provide either ourselves or through vendors, or many other web services and other means. But automating the process and then giving you a platform or an engine to aggregate all that information. And I left this out earlier, but you're also then, you're aggregating, well, I touched on it, you're able to put that against what you're trying to measure. And in this case of a regulation, for instance, you're measuring it against a limit set by the government or a legal entity like the EPA. And so then you can look at how you're gathering that information from an equipment or a site, all the way up to, you can ensure your compliance, you can ensure within limits, but now you also have, from what you were already managing, you have all the information you need for carbon footprint management as it relates to sustainability reporting and being that good corporate citizen Mike talked about. Yeah. All the way through calculating and then getting that information into, whether it's external agency reports, spreadsheets. You see a small example of one of our standard dashboards for GHG or emissions carbon footprint management there, and being able to then utilize that information for making decisions. We have forecasting capabilities around our emissions capabilities right within environment management. It allows you to do forecasting so you can understand optimization and understand what that looks like. And I guess I'll just stop there, Mike, and ask if you have anything to add. There's a million more things we could talk about, but that's the footprint.
I think it's important to mention that the outcomes of this process here would also be used for that product view. It may not be the only source of information, but as we work with the teams that are kind of developing that product footprint management solution, the idea would be that, all right, you have these emissions amounts. You can look at it through the lens of production, tied in with other variables to get that overall footprint analysis. And again, we're making sure that this piece here is a source for their process.
And Mike, the one thing that you made me think of there that I'll leave with is I mentioned the ability to tie this all the way down to a component or a piece of equipment. So if you're looking at the product footprint, or you're looking at your one business aspect of your carbon footprint, we have native integration, and no other company can say that you do this with partners like YASH. You can tie into explicitly how you run your business and how SAP reflects your organization and how you've implemented it. You can tie into those sources all the way down at the lowest level of granularity, so that you're tracking at an unprecedented level of granularity and accuracy.
Yeah, and I think it's not just about the data collection or the granularity there. It's also the fact that, again, to match what you said, that we're trying to match what companies, what their processes are and what their needs are. The equations themselves, the factors that can be entered, all those are configurable. The idea being that, not everybody's going to calculate things exactly the same way. That there might need to be, certain nuances based on their processes, the types of products, their operations. I mean, there's a couple of companies where we're dealing with, scope 3 emissions around the shipping that they do over the ocean, and how do we model the actual emissions coming off of the ships, right. and based on the routes and things like that. So, bottom line, we're trying to be as flexible as we can to help on the data collection side of it, and the methods and the processes there, but also within the calculations themselves, and again, kind of adhere to.
And that's exactly what we did, Mike, in one of the previous projects. Again, if you can move to the next slide, Raj. So this shows that how this entire statistics of data was put together into this framework, which John, you just mentioned. The important aspects of data collection, which was completely kind of living into the island, some data which is residing into an core ERP system, a lot other data which is coming from manual system. Like if I talk about electricity bill, which I get for my electricity consumption, which are more like a manual entry. All these data put together, whether you call it as more towards the waste related information, waste being classified to hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste, how much of this waste is going to landfill, which of this waste is being consumed for, again, renewable purposes. Again, there are multiple parameters for energy and emissions as well. You say NOx emission, SOx emission, again, ppm, and multiple other parameters. All this information being collected from MII through using the external DCS system MII, or leveraging the data load files, leveraging the platform BTP to put together into this structured environmental module called environment management, which you just talked about. This made this entire data collection smooth, auditable, as well as foolproof. No minimum chances of human error, multiple workflows being triggered. If you see a deviation from last month to this month report, which goes beyond 20%, it triggers an alarm. Are you really sure that this information is correct? Those kind of automated checks make sure that the data is completely in sync. And again, we are actually putting the right data in, which puts together the framework towards the next level of calculation and hence reporting. As you see as we move towards the right-hand side, the environmental management module provides those calculation factors where we can convert all this energy, waste, water into the corresponding carbon dioxide value or greenhouse gas emissions, which is directly being reported to CDP. This is a real case, a real life case from one of our previous implementation, where the company was able to improve their scores from C negative to B negative, which is definitely 2 steps improvement within the second reporting from the system. The primary drivers for it, one, more efficiency in data collection. The data collection was much more faster and efficient. At the same time, the calculations were done on site. Now, for a global company, you see that so some of this data may come maybe into gallons. We use gallons in US in this part of the world, while we use liters. So how these gallons and liters correspond into a one equified figure which can be reported into carbon. So those kind of calculators emission calculation can be put into the system to make our life easy. Now this reporting, which used to take a couple of months earlier, is being done on a real-time basis every month. We are generating this report on a monthly basis. And when you talk about a submission of report to CDP authorities, maybe by March or April next month, you actually have a trend. Now, taking this to the next level, we talked about sustainability. More and more companies have started looking at their sustainability goals. Sustainability goals for 2025, sustainability goal for 2030 and 2035 and beyond. So a goal of reducing my waste by 10% actually will be coming from the trend which I'm following in the last 3 years. What are those strict measures or checkpoints which I have to put in together to put together a goal? So goal based upon the numbers, data, and statistics, that's probably this system provides. And this is the real example case of a use case of a similar story.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll just say that, I was kind of indirectly involved in this project in the very beginning when the company was going through software evaluation. I think YASH did a great job of working with the business, not only around this process, but also the safety processes, and kind of driving them forward and making sure that these systems were leveraged in the right way to again kind of adhere with their exact processes, their exact requirements, and get to this point where they have such a kind of a high level of automation and validation. So kind of hats off to you guys on this one.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your support on this. And definitely there are many more things aligned for us together and Sparta.
Well, gentlemen, again, thank you for covering off on that topic and diving into an overview of what SAP specifically is doing around carbon footprinting and emissions management. John and Mike, from the SAP perspective, that was great. Yogesh, the information you shared from the partner standpoint with YASH Technologies just further cemented the value of working not only with SAP, but also seeing the value that partners can bring to that table. And we'll wrap up that topic around the carbon footprinting, the emissions management. Keeping along those lines, though, of the value of the partner, Yogesh, you and I have talked about the vast amount of experience that YASH has in EHS, and you led in your intro talking about your passion around the solution. I think you mentioned you have 18 years or maybe even more than 18 years of on-the-job experience with EHS, and that's beyond impressive that you have that scope. And I know the team that you're accountable for mirrors a similar amount of experience and passion around EHS. Take this webinar and this discussion from the broad discussion that we've had and share with the audience some real case studies or success stories that you've been part of. That way the audience can see some of the output that has happened or some of that success that has happened as a result of using the SAP EHS solution with YASH Technologies as the partner that helps them with that process.
Sure, John. So I again go back into my 2002, 2003 years when I started my, as I said, first job on the job product compliance. The EHS implementation of this REACH and ROS compliance was a multi-months, and in fact, I'll say, I don't mind saying, it was a year-long project which get us one functionality to get it validated through business. What we have seen over the past years, and in fact, specifically in the last 5-7 years, that the things, everybody is looking for something very quick, something they want to be done quickly. Nobody has patience to live into like 3 years long project and then probably see something shaping up. And that's what probably again, SAP, most of the SAP solutions are based upon the best practices built upon the accelerate methodology, deploy it and it's ready to go. Taking it further from where they stand, we at YASH have been working together with SAP in releasing or maybe taking out more accelerated and pre-packaged solution. One such solution is Safe at Work, which we brought last year out in the market. As you see on the screen, this solution primary objective was to get you started with your safety program within weeks. And again, you heard it right. I talked about years to months, and I'm talking about building something which is kind of takes this entire thing moving, the safety programs, including incident management, audit management, and the basic emission management and other related stuff. Since I talked about releasing it or launching it last year, Last year was a year which was different from any other year in our lives. We were into a pandemic mode where we all were working from home. We were all talking about our health declaration. How many people are ready to come to office? How many people can be brought into the office because of the current pandemic? So considering all those things, we kept on innovating and bringing those functionalities into this package solution, which probably kept organizations leveraging this standard SAP solution and still being able to launch this within a couple of weeks. If you go to the next slide, this specifically talks about the framework. If I wanted to get somebody back to work or maybe somebody in my office, the first thing I would like to do is having the right health declaration details or maybe vaccination update. Vaccination information is completely optional, voluntary, recommended by the organization to say that it is recommended to be vaccinated. Again, cannot be forced for sure, based upon the Personal Privacy Information Act. At the same time, having this information makes me plan my workforce a little better. Now, this is at an organization and personal end. Think about that facility and a location premise, which is earlier supporting around 250 people. Now, because of the social distancing norms and the change which we have seen recently, now I probably can accommodate nothing more than 150 people. So on a particular day, I probably would call this out people or maybe divide those people on alternate days. How do I do it? Which people to come on which days? Those all kind of efficient planning is possible if I have this information. So we put together this framework of getting this health declaration and vaccination update into the system, then probably generating those graphics and the information for the facility manager, EHS manager, HR coordinators at the site, and get a pre-printed list and information to people in hand who all are coming to office. But as soon as you entered into office, as yesterday I was at one of our client site, he asked me to actually register on a kiosk about my location, about my name, about the my temperature. It took the temperature sensing machine. He took my picture. All this information is being done to keep you safe. At the same, there are other people at the facility definitely whom you and your organization care about. And that's where this health information going back into the database. Now, when I came into this office today, it showed that yesterday you took this same survey or same screening at 11:22. So this was valid up to only 11:21 today. So those kind of data going into a singular database is something which probably we integrated within the SAP system. All this information feeding into the occupational health management, and then probably letting the person come to or maybe go back to come to work. So in this way, we basically created an ecosystem or created a framework in which you have the information up hand for their health declaration, their current health status, as well as what was yesterday and today, and you can trend it further. Taking it further down, we have incident management where you can report by using the latest mobile application, giving the power of, again, the system in your hands. You really don't have to be dependent on any kiosk or any, as I said, system. On your mobile, you report an application with those smart workflows. It flows to the right people who take appropriate action, define those timelines for those corrective action, taken care, action got taken care. A lot of action, again, the audits and inspection has to happen, or that they are happening every day at site. So between this period and this period is a time when they go for sanitization, and hence those need to be planned in advance. All those things can be planned well within the system with this safe at work approach. So this is probably one such scenario which we created as an end-to-end solution, and again, took it out to the customer. Many of our customers are leveraging the benefits out of it. Now, if you say the outcome of this, if you move to the next slide, so this next slide quickly talks about a case study. As I said, I always am a big fan of representing what can be done to what has been done. And that's what we all would like to hear, so that I can resonate with the theory into more like a practical approach. In this customer, which is again a global company with, as you see, a sizable company with 40 plus plants spread across the globe, with more than 20,000 people. Again, we implemented this solution, this integrated SAP Health and Safety Management solution with all the modules as you see in the center box: incident management, risk assessment, audit management. What is important over here is the heading of this title, as you said, that we continue to get the reportable injuries from the system. Earlier, which was into disparate system, from 4 different applications, the data was being accumulated. Now, by leveraging this, putting this into that singular framework or single application layer where all the data was reported, we probably knew what are the incident types, where exactly the injuries are happening, what are the actions to be taken, who are responsible for taking those action, and hence aligning them into an automated workflow within their outlook, and then driving towards a more effective management of this incident management schedule, which gave us a tangible outcome of 15% reduction in reportable injuries. And that actually means a lot. All of us who are working into health and safety understand the value of the importance of an injury. And an injury is not just a medical cost. It is not just a lost time. It is actually the morale of the people who are working in and around the facility. And moreover, today it is being linked to the branding of the organization, which is absolutely has much more value than just a number attached to it.
So, well, and Yogesh, if you think about it, it's also part of many of the sustainability reporting indexes, around the health and safety metrics and things like that. So, and that ties in with the branding, as you said.
Completely agree. So 15% reduction in the reportable injuries. Again, this was definitely a tangible outcome. Then probably, as I said, building a safety culture. Now that organization is the zero harm program, if we call it a safety observation program, is linked directly to the incident. If there is one reportable injury, it actually increases the safety observation count by 5x, which means that you have to report 5x more safety observation, because there is a direct correlation between more safety observation reported beforehand, getting addressed through the same framework of corrective action, making sure those are addressed, and hence reducing the injuries. So definitely this is a great example. More things definitely we did out of this. The time doesn't permit me to go in detail. We implemented the ISO 14000 within the SAP EHS system. The SAP systems are always flexible to deliver the business outcome, what people are asking for. So ISO 14001 checklist have been completely built into the system into a more scattered approach, with different sections being responsible for different people being responsible for this different section, and the data coming in together to give you a quick status check on the readiness for your 14,000. And this helped this company to get 3 more sites getting 14,000 to 14,000 compliant in 2019. Definitely, again, a good, remarkable or milestone to be accomplished or celebrated about.
If I can add, Yogesh, one thing to that from a bottom line standpoint, certainly, as you said, it's not just about the costs associated with incidents, but I come out of oil and gas, as you know, and for decades in that business, you're tracked by your performance for health and safety as well. And then when you're downstream in that industry, poor performance means you don't get work. You won't be selected by the E&Ps. Now, what we're seeing, going back to our very first point at the beginning of this session, is we're seeing that translate to other industries as well from that social responsibility standpoint. So it's not about safety performance just to make sure that you're a good performer from a safety record, but it's also one of those indicators, as Mike said, regardless of the industry, including those heavy process ones that have been doing that for years. Just wanted to point that out. So this is important, and we help give a framework for that visibility and real-time continual improvement that Mike mentioned in the beginning. And Yogesh, you guys did great work around this, so congrats on that project.
Thank you, John. Thanks a lot. My last slide will not take more than a minute. I know, John, you're already ready for your next question. So this next slide talks about the sustainability view for an organization. We talked about sustainability a lot into our previous questions. So organizations are looking for deeper visibility on all these aspects. We talked about waste, we talked about energy, we talked about discharges, water discharges. So where exactly my cost is going, how much energy I'm actually spending or being classified into renewable and non-renewable. And that's what this graph represents. This graph, which is reading the data from environmental management, it is reading the data from multiple other sources, putting it into the right charts, trending it against the last year performance versus this year graph, and representing across to the leadership, say the operations plant managers, operations leaders, CXOs who are looking for this kind of visibility so that appropriate action can be taken. And this drives their sustainability. As I mentioned, this drives the goals which we wanted to set for our sustainability limits in the years to come. So these kind of reports are possible because of, I say, singular data layer, which SAP provides, the mature framework of solution, which kind of scatters across the emission, water, waste, and goes beyond, and are definitely leading towards the next level of outcome, which we all talked about. As I said, from top line to bottom line, moving towards what we call it as green line.
Yeah.
All right, Yogesh, and really, really good information, and the additional insights provided by Mike and John from SAP just added to not only the value of the case studies and the success stories you shared, but again, the partnership between SAP and YASH Technologies. Mike and John, as we tie up that part of the webinar around the case studies that Yogesh delivered from YASH Technologies, want to come back to you for the final topic that we'll address, and then we'll move very rapidly into our overview of the webinar from a panelist perspective. But John and Mike, when you think about the EHS community embracing digital transformation, when we talked about setting up this webinar, and John touched on it again at the beginning today, how the speed of adoption was so fast during the pandemic, and I would say what maybe even outpaced the speed of adoption is the speed of innovation. So I want to just take a step back, and John and Mike, from an SAP's perspective, let's just show off a little bit here and talk about that speed of innovation and what SAP has been doing to push the envelope in terms of that digital transformation, and what SAP can help clients do in their own environments to transform their EHS environments. And Mike, I'll start with you. If you could embrace it in about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll do the same thing with John, and then we'll move to our wrap up.
Well, I think that, and maybe there's a slide that we can kind of use to illustrate. If you get, yeah, we'll go with this one. But so bottom line, again, as solution manager, what you're asking is kind of like what I have to think about every day, right? It's how are the customers using our current systems as the world is changing, and requirements change. What do we have to do to keep everything relevant and keep everything moving and drive those innovations? So one of the focus areas, and we already talked about the support for the sustainable practices and processes, things like that. But another major area of focus is to look at and leverage some of the innovation that's out there. Some of it's within SAP, some of it's with our partners, some of it's, some IoT vendors and others, where we're like, okay, how do we leverage the platform of EHS almost as like a backbone to drive new processes, new capabilities, better situational awareness? I think that, the term situational awareness is something I use all the time. In the context of whether it's COVID response or sustainability or just general EHS practices, how do we improve that overall? And one way to do it is to leverage some of these, and you see some examples here, whether it's smart cameras. We've got a partner that is driving an AI-based algorithm to leverage video, let's say security camera video and other video feeds to then highlight risks, detect incidents, things like that. We have vendors that are driving connected worker use cases where workers are out in the field. They may be by themselves. They may have restrictions of where they can go based on medical situations, things like that. We're trying to again drive kind of a real-time view, real-time reaction, and improved situational awareness with these these pieces. Same thing at the bottom there. You see more of the environmental side, where actual sensors driving a real-time view of air quality, which is paramount as we've learned over the past year. COVID transmission, one of the factors was particulates in the air. So if you're in a dusty environment where air's not moving that much, things like that, that may increase the risk of transmission of the virus. So you want to have an idea of a real-time picture of air quality. And then obviously the controls and the mitigation strategies around that. So overall, just to maybe kind of tie this up on my side, it's we leverage our EHS platform to then drive some of these other technologies and pull the data in, and then leverage our integration to the rest of the SAP enterprise systems to get even further value and insight. Integration to HR, integration to asset management and equipment, finance, things like that. John?
Yeah, Mike. Mike said, we leverage the EHS platform for this and the integration to the parts of SAP that we've talked about today, whether that's asset registries or plant maintenance or personnel and organizational hierarchies. But in the context of innovation and innovative technologies out in the world, I would say that we're leveraging the larger innovation platform that SAP has positioned and really defined over the last couple of years. You all would have heard many times over now about the intelligent enterprise and how we've positioned the intelligent enterprise end to end, regardless of business process. And most recently, you've likely heard of the business technology platform, which the intelligent enterprise is based on. And so our vision of that business technology platform affords us in EHS and other areas, let's say, a platform for these innovative technologies to tie in. And so why is that important? Mike's talking about being able to tie into sensors for some of these things around safety or environmental, but we're also able to leverage other parts of SAP where you have that same capability of tying into other disparate systems or processes that aren't inside SAP, or even within SAP where there's not an explicit integration. The key is having a platform of innovation is really one of the themes you've heard from SAP in the market over at least the last 6 months to a year of it's not just an ERP system. It's not just your finance or your supply chain tool or your HR tool. It really is that platform for innovation. And EHS, like every other part of SAP, is leveraging that platform to extend our capabilities beyond the SAP footprint into the footprint of what businesses, customers are using, even outside of SAP, to pull it all into the single platform. And that can't be overstated enough. Being able to have that technology platform as part of SAP, in addition to everything SAP has given you for nearly 50 years, is what allows a partner like YASH to be able to do the amazing things Yogesh talked about, tie in those systems. You would have mentioned, or you would have seen maybe one of Yogesh's slides even mentioned BTP. And that's just one thing I wanted to point out of how this is extended. And I guess last point, out with customers all the time, they're asking us, not just because of the pandemic, but that's a great reason why too, how can we do more? We have to do more, and we have to do it with less. And these abilities and this platform allows you to do that.
Yeah, and just a real quick comment for the audience. If you're interested in some of these specific technologies and the vendors where we've got a couple of pictures here, just let us know. We can point you to those. And again, with YASH, what they've done to kind of highlight integration and interfacing, capabilities are there to kind of pull that data into EHS on an implementation.
Yep.
Mike, John, Yogesh, thank you for the insights on all of that. I want to transition as we're really coming up against the top of the hour here, but the last impression is just as important as the first impression. So for the audience members that have hung with us till the end, really want to do a quick lightning fire of what your key takeaway is, but hold the thought. So think about it for a second. We have one question that we weren't able to get to, and it's by an anonymous viewer. It's a really, really great question. It's directed to Yogesh, and it's how the Safe at Work solution differs from the SAP Occupational Health module. My ask is, if that viewer is still in attendance, if you would connect directly with Yogesh after the webinar, and you can do that by his email, yogesh.nagpal@yash.com. Again, yogesh.nagpal@yash.com. If you need help with his spelling of his name, it's right there on his image tile on the Zoom meeting at the top. Again, yogesh.nagpal@yash.com. But without further ado, I'm just going to go across the top. John, Mike, and then Yogesh, you finish up your one key takeaway that you have from today's webinar.
Hey, John, real quick, there was one other question that would be answered live. It was basically from Prasant Reddy. What is your advice for any EHS professional to become a full-time SAP EHS consultant? I think all three of us have experience. Obviously, Yogesh does, and John and I came from the consulting side. I think my real quick answer, we can always follow up on that as well, and kind of point you towards whether it's enablement material and other things. But my opinion would be that the first thing is to make sure with a topic like EHS, make sure you spend enough time understanding the domain and then working towards the different aspects of the software. That way, as you get into a project, you can understand exactly what the customer is asking, and how you can kind of translate that towards, you know, configuring the system. But I don't know, John or Yogesh, if you want to add to that. Just to kind
I'll
of
just say that no better consultant in the EHS space than a person who is an EHS professional.
Yeah.
And so that's just another aspect of that. And we would welcome you to the ranks.
Got it. Mike, John, thanks for that. Just again, super quick, John, your one key takeaway from today.
Yeah, thanks, John. It's really, most importantly, I would say, is leveraging the huge and the mature SAP ecosystem. And in the case of this webinar, looking today at how well YASH and SAP works together, and the solutions ability to be a platform for us to do that, to help customers solve their problems. That's the key takeaway, I'd say. Thanks,
John. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, I'd actually kind of echo it. I think that was a perfect way to kind of summarize. And I think that, you know, there's this, we're showing a couple of benefits here overall. I think just bottom line, from the solution management perspective for the EHS applications at SAP, you know, we're trying to drive benefit at all levels of the organization, as corporate, practitioner, down to the field level. I hope you saw some of those examples today, the different topics, whether it's the, you know, IoT and wearables concepts and devices that are available, all the way up through corporate reporting for you know, greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that, you know, again, the takeaway I would hope you have here is that as we're trying our best to identify requirements at all levels and provide, you know, the best solutions possible at all levels within your organization, and working with partners like YASH to actually implement, you know, those solutions in the right way.
Yogesh, about 10 seconds. Last words from YASH Technologies.
Sure. The world is moving towards digital transformation. Again, in the EHS space, building towards a solid, strong, and scalable foundation is the key. SAP solution, SAP EHS provides that, as I use the word, solid, strong, and scalable framework, which were there in 2000, which was there in 2015, and which is helping you, which will continue to help you in 2030 when you or you may not be there in the organization. So build something, deliver something to the organization which is scalable and runs long, and drive sustainability with sustainable solution with SAP EHS. That would be my takeaway.
Yogesh, you wrapped it up eloquently. Thank you, my friend. And to all of our viewers that have hung with us, apologies for running over by a couple of minutes, but really wanted to get those last words and those parting thoughts from our panelists. John Martin, Mike Centerato with SAP, thank you so much for your time today. Yogesh from YASH Technologies, appreciate all the subject matter expertise that you brought to our panel today. And to all of our viewers, again, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Everyone.
Thanks, John.
Good day.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, enough. Let me thank you as well for coordinating and making the event so smooth.
My pleasure.
Great job. Thank you, John.